My name is Renee Calloway, and I was 34 years old the night my mother told me, in front of my entire family, that my sister needed a house more than I did. What she didn't know was that I already owned one, and it wasn't the one she thought. Welcome back. If you've ever been the one everybody leaned on until the day you finally stopped holding still, stay with me. Because this story is going to feel like your own name being called out loud. Drop a comment when you get to the part where the porch light comes on. You'll know it when you see it. Let me take you back to the Thursday everything cracked open. I run a small architectural restoration firm out of a converted marina office 2 hours from the town I grew up in. We take old coastal buildings that people have given up on, warped porches, split beams, foundations the tide has been chewing on for decades, and we bring them back. I built that company out of a used truck and a stubborn refusal to fail twice. So when my largest client, a hotel group renovating a historic inn, pulled their funding that Thursday morning, I didn't fall apart. I'd lost bigger blows before. I sat in my office, ran the numbers twice, and closed the laptop. The thing that actually hurt wasn't the money. It was knowing I'd have to explain it to a family who had never once asked what I did for a living, only what I could do for them. They thought I did something with old houses. Close enough, I always said. I never corrected it because correcting it meant explaining, and explaining meant an argument about why I hadn't shared it sooner. That evening, I drove the familiar 90 minutes inland to Millbrook, the town where I grew up, where my parents still lived in the house I'd been quietly propping up for almost 2 years. My father had a stroke 18 months earlier. I'd taken to visiting most weekends since, picking up whatever bills had slipped, whatever repairs had been ignored. I told myself it was temporary. It never was. When I pulled up, there were 2 extra cars in the driveway. My sister Dana's boyfriend, Trent's car, and my cousin Miles's truck. In my family, extra cars on a weeknight usually meant a decision had already been made about me before I walked in the door. The moment I stepped inside, my sister's voice hit me before I even got my coat off. "So it's true," Dana said, not looking up from her phone. "You lost the contract." My mother, Linda, was in her usual chair, teacup in hand, nodding like she already knew. My father, Gordon, was quiet in the doorway, watching me the way he watched everything now, carefully, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. "I didn't lose anything," I said. "The client pulled funding. It happens in this industry." Dana wasn't interested in the distinction. She turned straight to my mother. "Mom, if she's broke now, who's covering my rent this month?" There it was. Not "Are you okay?" Not what happened. Just the invoice, delivered before I'd even sat down. My mother set her teacup down with that careful, rehearsed calm she used whenever she'd already decided something and wanted it to look like a discussion. "Renee, honey, don't get upset. We'll figure it out. You always figure it out." That's when my father walked past me into the hallway and came back holding a flattened moving box. He didn't meet my eyes as he set it on the coffee table and began folding it into shape. "Your sister and Trent are talking about moving in together," he said. "It makes more sense for them to have the guest room you've been using." Then my mother delivered the line I would hear in my sleep for weeks afterward. "Your sister needs this house more than you do, Renee." She said it softly, like kindness, which somehow made it land harder than if she'd shouted it. Dana didn't even glance up from her phone. My cousin Miles, over by the kitchen doorway, gave me a look I couldn't read yet. Something between sympathy and warning. I watched my father carry that box into the room I'd been sleeping in every weekend for a year and a half, and begin folding my things into it with the same steady hands that once taught me how to frame a door. "You're really doing this," I said. He didn't look up. "You always land on your feet," my mother called from the other room, like that settled everything. I picked up the box myself before anyone could hand it to me. On top sat an old tin case that had belonged to my grandmother, the one item in that house that had ever truly been mine. I held it for a moment, then reached into my coat pocket and felt the cold shape of a set of keys I had never once explained to anyone in that living room. I didn't explain them now. I drove the 90 minutes back to the coast that night with the box rattling on the seat beside me. I didn't cry. I was doing math. By the time the salt smell of the harbor came through the window, I already knew exactly how the next month was going to go, but I had no idea yet just how far the ground under that house had already shifted, or that the shifting had my name written on it. My business partner Ada was still at our office past 10 that night, the way she always was when a deal fell apart and we needed to scramble. She saw me carrying the box in and set down her coffee immediately. "You finally left that house," she said. "They left me," I told her. "I just stopped arguing about it." Ada had been telling me for a year to pull back from Millbrook. She'd watched me wire money home, cover late bills, drive that same stretch of highway every weekend, and come back each time a little more hollow. "Good," she said now. "So what are you going to do about it?" I didn't answer right away. I set the box on my desk and looked at the tin case sitting on top. Underneath it was a folder I kept locked in a drawer at home, one I'd carried back and forth for 3 years, like a secret too heavy to put down. Ada saw where I was looking. "Is it time?" she asked. For the first time in 18 months, I felt the rope I'd been pulling taut for so long finally go slack. Let me back up, because that folder didn't appear out of nowhere. 3 years earlier, at a coastal property auction, I'd bought a half-ruined beach house on a strip of land 40 minutes north of my office. It had been sitting condemned for over a decade. The same house, as it turned out, that my grandmother had lost during the bad years long before I was born. I hadn't known that when I bought it. I only learned it later, piecing together stories my grandmother had told me as a child about a porch she once loved and never stopped grieving. I told no one in my family I owned it. Not my mother, not my father, not Dana. I spent every free weekend for 3 years restoring it board by board, the way I restored every other broken coastal home, except this one I never listed for a client. This one I kept. 2 days after I left that house with my box, my cousin Miles called. Miles is the only person in that family who has ever told me the truth without being asked first. "Hey," he said, "you should know something. A letter came for the house. Bank letterhead. Your mom's been staring at it all morning, real spooked." "What kind of letter?" I asked. "Something about a home equity line," he said. "She keeps asking your dad what it means. He doesn't know either." He paused. "Renee, your name's on it somehow." I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. I didn't know about any home equity line. And if my name was on it, that meant somebody had put it there without asking me. I would find out exactly how, and exactly how deep it went before the week was over, and it would turn out my family had been leaning on me in ways I never agreed to, in places I never thought to check. Dana called that same afternoon. I almost let it ring. Some old reflex still hoped she might be calling to ask how I was doing. "Hey," she said instead, "my car insurance is due Monday. Can you cover it? Also, Mom says the water heater's making a weird noise, so that too, probably." Not a single question about me, just a running tab. "Dana," I said, "do you know where I am right now? I'm 2 hours away, and I'm off your payroll." A pause, and then Trent's voice muttering something low in the background. "Ask her about the other thing," he said, and Dana shushed him too late. "What other thing?" I asked. "Nothing," she said, too fast, and hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time. There was a script in that family, and I'd been playing my assigned part in it for over a decade. The dependable one, the open wallet, the wall everyone leaned against and never thanked. Now that I'd finally stepped off that stage, they were confused. The lines weren't landing the way they used to. That night, I sent one message to all three of them: my mother, my father, and Dana. No paragraph, no apology, no explanation. Just the plain facts. Every bill I had quietly been covering, the property taxes, the insurance, Dana's car payment I'd been co-signing, stopped as of that date. I gave him the bank's number and nothing else. Before I hit send, I wrote one line, just for myself. Family isn't a debt you owe forever. It's a door. And I was done holding it open for people who only knocked when they needed something. I didn't send that part. I just needed to read it once in my own handwriting to believe it. The storm hit by the next afternoon. My mother called 6 times before I answered. When I finally picked up, she didn't lead with the bills. She led with the wound she knew cut deepest. "After everything this family has done for you," she said, "this is who you've become? And what exactly has this family done for me, Mom?" Silence. She didn't have an answer ready for that one. "You've always landed on your feet, Renee," she said instead, falling back on the old refrain like a coin she kept flipping because it always came up the same side. "You don't need us the way your sister does." There it was again. The sentence she used like a hammer. The one that turned my entire life into an excuse to overlook me. I told her plainly that I'd stopped covering things that weren't mine to cover. She said something then that told me exactly where this was headed. "We'll just have to figure out your grandmother's 90th birthday without you." My grandmother, Eleanor, was turning 90 that same month, and the whole family had been planning something for weeks. My mother had just made the celebration a battlefield without even realizing what she was standing on. I drove out to see my grandmother 2 days later, but not for my mother's sake. Eleanor lived in a small room at the back of my parents' house now. Her world narrowed down to a recliner and a window. She lit up the moment I walked in, the way she always did, like I was the only good weather she still got. We talked about small things first, and then she grew quiet, looking out at the gray afternoon sky. 90 years, she said softly. Can you believe it? What do you want for your birthday? I asked her. She smiled, but it was a sad, faraway kind of smile. I had one good house in my whole life, she said. Right on the water. Your grandfather and I bought it the year we married. We lost it when the money ran out. She squeezed my hand. I used to watch the sun go down off that porch and think, nobody can take this from me. Funny what a person remembers at the end. I didn't tell her what I knew, not yet. But driving back to the coast that evening, I called my attorney about a document I'd been thinking about for 3 years and never had the courage to finally sign. The house my grandmother lost is the house I had already bought back. I'd spent 3 years restoring it, and only in the final months of work, tearing into a sealed wall beside the old chimney, had a rusted tin dropped out from behind the lath and plaster, untouched for over 60 years. Inside were photographs of my grandmother, young, my grandfather's arm around her, the porch new and white behind them. And beneath the photographs, a folded slip of paper in her handwriting. A list of things she wanted before she died. Most of it was simple. See her cousins once more, make peace with an old friend. But at the very top, underlined twice hard enough to nearly tear the paper she'd written, watch one more sunset from the porch of a house that's mine. She had sealed that wish inside the wall the year the house was built, and it had waited there in the dark through the foreclosure, through every owner who never once opened that wall, until I did. I called my attorney straight from that porch. I want to set up a life estate, I told her. My grandmother lives there for the rest of her life. No rent, no conditions. I keep ownership, but the right to live there completely is hers. I decided, right there, watching the tide go out, that I would throw my grandmother's 90th birthday on that very porch, in the house she'd lost and never knew she'd gotten back. And the family that packed my life into a cardboard box could find out exactly the way everyone else would. I started planning that same night. Caterer, string lights, a carved wooden sign I made myself and kept covered by the door. Ada thought I'd lost my mind. "You're throwing a party for the people who threw you out," she said. "I'm throwing a party for my grandmother," I told her. "They're just going to be there for it." My phone buzzed while we talked. A new booking inquiry had come through the restoration company's website, where I occasionally rented the finished cottage out for small events. The name on the request stopped me cold. Linda Calloway. My own mother had gone looking online for somewhere beautiful to host my grandmother's 90th birthday, and the algorithm had handed her my house. She had no idea it was mine. She didn't even recognize it as the house her own mother had lost, because the restored photographs looked nothing like the ruin the family remembered. Ada read the screen over my shoulder and let out a low whistle. "She's trying to rent your house to throw a party you were already planning to throw. In the house her own mother lost, that she doesn't know you own." "Don't answer it yet," I told her. "Let me think about how I want this to go." I already knew. I just needed to be sure I had the stomach for it. Before I could plan the party further, Miles called again, voice tight. "I found out what that bank letter's about," he said. "You're not going to like it." 2 years earlier, it turned out, my mother had opened a home equity line against my parents' house to help fund Dana's car, and eventually, Trent's failed business idea. Because her own credit was thin, she had used the strongest name attached to that house on paper: mine. She'd kept copies of my old signature from co-signing Dana's car loan, and she had used them to forge my name onto the equity application. I had never seen it. I had never signed it. But according to that document, I was a borrower, and the line was now delinquent. I sat with the phone in my hand and felt the entire shape of it land. The house that had thrown me out had been quietly standing on my name the whole time. I didn't panic. I called my attorney the next morning, and we went at the problem methodically. We pulled the loan documents, laid the forged signature beside my real one, and saw the mismatch plainly. We filed a written fraud dispute with the lender, an identity theft affidavit, and a police report. My attorney was blunt. "This is a strong claim, but it can take months. What we're doing is disputing your liability. If the forgery holds up, the responsibility shifts back to whoever actually signed it." Filing that report meant naming my own mother in writing as the person who'd forged my signature. A year earlier, I would have flinched and quietly absorbed the debt to keep the peace. Not this time. I had Ada answer my mother's booking request under the company name only. No mention of me anywhere. My mother, delighted to have found somewhere that photographed beautifully, paid the deposit without asking a single question about who actually owned it. People like my mother rarely ask who's holding a thing up. They simply enjoy standing on it. The family was coming to my coast, to my house, to celebrate my grandmother's 90th birthday, and not one of them knew whose porch they'd be standing on. If you've ever let someone walk straight into a truth they never saw coming, you already know exactly what I was feeling. Stay close, because the party is only minutes away now, and so is the part nobody in that family saw coming. My father called the week before the party. He never calls. "Renee," he said, and then a long silence, the kind he always fills a room with instead of words. "That night with the box, I shouldn't have packed your things." I waited. I had waited 18 months for one true sentence from him, and I wasn't going to rush it. "Your mother said it was best for everyone," he went on. "I just went along. That's the thing about me, I suppose." "It is the thing about you, Dad," I said. Not cruel, just honest. He asked if I was coming to the birthday. "I'm coming," I told him. "More than you know." The cars started arriving on the gravel a little after 4 that Saturday. I greeted my grandmother first, wheeled up the path in a borrowed chair, a shawl around her shoulders. I watched her face the entire way. She looked at the cottage, the way you look at a word you can't quite remember, and then the porch came into full view. White rail, string lights, windows gleaming, and she stopped completely. "Gordon," she whispered to my father, who was pushing her chair. "This is—" She couldn't finish it. "This is my house." My father went still. He'd grown up visiting that very porch as a boy. He looked at the cottage and then slowly at me, standing at the top of the steps, and something crossed his face I had never seen there before. My mother breezed up the path in her good dress, already smiling for the gathering cousins, already performing the role of gracious hostess. "Isn't it lovely, Mama? I found it just for you." My grandmother wasn't listening to her at all. She was staring at the carved wooden sign by the door, freshly uncovered that morning. Eleanor's porch, cut into cedar, weathered on purpose to look like it had always been there. "Who did this?" she whispered. "Who brought my house back?" That was the moment I stepped down from the porch into the middle of the lawn where everyone could see me, and said in a voice that didn't need to be loud at all, "Mom, you didn't rent this house?" The whole lawn went quiet, the way a beach goes quiet right before the tide pulls back. "The company you booked through is mine," I said. "I bought this house 3 years ago at auction, the same house Grandma and Grandpa lost. I've been restoring it with my own hands every weekend. You all thought I was somewhere else." My mother's composure cracked completely in front of every cousin and church friend she'd wanted to impress. "You hid this from us? After everything we did for you, this is your revenge?" "It's not revenge, Mom," I said quietly. "It's just the truth. Finally standing up in a room you can't talk it back down in." I crouched beside my grandmother's chair and placed the folder in her lap, opening it so she could see the deed, her name typed clean across the life estate. "You live here for the rest of your life," I told her. "No rent, no conditions. Every sunset off this porch is yours." Her hands shook as she read it twice, then pressed the paper to her chest and made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "My house," she said. "My own house." My mother tried the old line one more time, desperate. "You've always landed on your feet, Renee." I looked at her and let her see for the first time that the words had stopped working. "I did land on my feet," I said. "Right here, on the porch you helped pack me away from." My grandmother lifted her head, voice thin but clear enough for every cousin to hear. "Linda, hush." The girl gave me my porch back. Let her have her say. For the first time in my life, my mother had absolutely nothing to say. The party didn't end so much as quietly dissolve. Cousins drifted toward the cake, unsure where to look. My father walked past my mother, put a steady hand on my grandmother's shoulder, and said, roughly, "She's right. Renee's right about all of it. It came decades too late." But he said it, and he didn't look away. Dana lingered on the porch steps after most people had left, and before she went, she said quietly that she hadn't known about the loan. It wasn't much, but it was the first true thing she'd said to me in years. I stayed behind with my grandmother as the sun went down gold across the water, the deed still in her lap. "First sunset, that's all mine," she said softly. "Took 90 years. "It's yours now," I told her. "Every one of them from here on." The equity fraud dispute ground on for months afterward. But I was no longer quietly carrying the weight of what my mother had signed in my name. What she had actually put her hand to, she would answer for herself. My company recovered. We landed 2 new contracts by autumn, and the hole that lost hotel deal left filled in, board by board, the way holes always do when you keep working. My mother and I didn't speak for a long while after that. I never slammed the door. I simply stopped holding it open with my own back. People still ask me sometimes if I feel guilty for finally stepping away. I tell them what I've come to understand. Family isn't a debt you owe forever. It's a door, and I'm done holding it open for people who only knock when they want something. The ones who knock because they love you, you'll always let in. Everyone else can learn to carry their own roof for a while. If there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's that setting a boundary was never about slamming a door on someone you love. It's about finally deciding who gets a key. That's my story. 1 lost contract, 1 cardboard box, and a porch my family tried to give away, in a house they never knew I'd already bought back. If this reminded you that your kindness was never a debt you owe forever, take that as your sign tonight. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.